Buckingham Palace, long known for controlling its optics, failed to contain this. Just 3 minutes ago, cameras caught Brad Pitt, yes, the Brad Pitt exiting the palace's rear gates after an unannounced private meeting. At the heart of it, Catherine, Princess of Wales. No royal press release, no scheduled appearance, only questions and the world wants answers. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The footage was raw, unfiltered, and immediately viral. A black SUV clearly accompanied by a discreet royal escort pulling away from a lesser-known exit used only for unofficial visits. The passenger in the back seat, unmistakable. Brad Pitt, face partially obscured by tinted windows and sunglasses, his expression unreadable. Within minutes, the image hit every social media platform, triggering a digital storm that outpaced even the palace's ability to respond. Reporters scrambled for context, palace aides were caught off guard, and insiders began leaking fragments of what they knew or claimed to know. But one detail set everything ablaze: there was no entry for Brad Pitt on the official visitor logs. None. That single fact broke the floodgates. If this wasn't an official visit, what was it? And why, out of everyone, was he meeting privately with Catherine? Paparazzi footage obtained shortly after confirmed she had been seen entering the same wing of the palace just hours earlier, scheduled for what aides described as a private strategy session. But strategy for what and with whom remained unanswered. The palace's press office issued an immediate no comment, the standard signal that something bigger was unfolding behind the curtain. No denial. No clarification. Just silence. And in that silence, the speculation bloomed. Was it about a mental health campaign? A new charitable film project? Was the palace seeking Hollywood's help to modernize its crumbling relevance? Or was there something far more personal, far more unanticipated, behind that closed-door conversation? Theories ranged from wild to plausible, but one truth was clear: this wasn't accidental. It was calculated, coordinated, and entirely off-book. The monarchy, which once kept celebrity at bay, now seemed to be letting it in through a side door. And Catherine, the picture of composure and restraint, was now the center of a mystery no one could have predicted. The questions weren't just about Brad. They were about power, influence, disruption. Why now? Why her? Why him? The timing, the secrecy, the complete lack of protocol, it all pointed to something deliberate, something urgent. Whether it was a crisis in disguise or a carefully orchestrated pivot, the result was the same: the world was watching, and the crown could no longer script the narrative. But to understand the magnitude of this moment, we must explore how Catherine and Brad's paths crossed in the first place. Their worlds seemed galaxies apart: Hollywood royalty and British monarchy. Yet sources reveal this wasn't their first encounter. A secret connection going back years may hold the key to why Brad is suddenly stepping into royal territory, and why it's happening now. Their first known intersection wasn't captured by flashing cameras or shouted headlines, but rather in the hushed corridors of a UN charity summit in 2019. Both were there not as celebrities or royals, but as advocates: Brad Pitt representing an initiative on post-conflict trauma in children, and Catherine quietly championing early childhood mental health. Those who witnessed their interaction describe it as brief but striking. A moment of mutual respect, two individuals deeply aligned on a cause that transcended title and fame. And from that point on, the connection didn't vanish, it deepened in silence. Whispers within humanitarian circles suggest their bond grew through shared allies. Mutual friends, trusted figures in child advocacy networks, reportedly served as informal bridges, allowing the two to correspond without public scrutiny. Emails, voice messages, and carefully timed calls kept their collaboration alive, shielded from the pressures of royal protocol and tabloid noise. The relationship was never romantic. Insiders insist it was strategic, purpose-driven, and fiercely guarded. But something shifted earlier this year. After Catherine's unexpected hospitalization and her prolonged retreat from the public eye, the tone of their correspondence reportedly changed. Close sources now suggest Brad reached out personally, not just with well wishes, but with a proposal. Not for a film or public appearance, but something deeper. A joint global platform on healing, grief, and resilience. A move that would merge his voice and resources with her unique platform. It wasn't just a pitch. It was a challenge, a call to action. And Catherine, still reeling from personal health battles and institutional pressure, reportedly saw in it a rare opportunity to step outside the confines of royal duty. Not everyone was pleased. William, though supportive of Catherine's causes, allegedly raised concerns about optics and timing. Palace aides were split, some urging caution, others seeing it as a potential lifeline for a monarchy struggling to modernize. Yet despite internal hesitations, momentum continued to build. Catherine pushed for private discussions. Brad agreed to fly in discreetly. Invitations were quietly extended to other influential voices for future strategy sessions, people whose names would never appear on public ledgers, but whose weight could shape policy from behind closed doors. It was no longer just about charity, it was about redefinition. Catherine wasn't simply partnering with Brad Pitt, she was stepping beyond the palace gates in spirit, aligning herself with voices that didn't ask permission to act. And as rumors swirl and alliances form, the full weight of that decision is beginning to ripple through the crown itself. And while the public speculates, behind palace gates, this unexpected meeting has triggered unease at the very top. Reports from inside Kensington suggest that William, Prince of Wales, was not informed in advance of Brad Pitt's visit. The result? A dramatic standoff behind the scenes, complete with slammed doors, silence at dinner, and a rift now dangerously exposed. When the photographs first began to circulate, grainy but unmistakable, of Brad Pitt's black SUV pulling away from Buckingham's side gate, William was reportedly at a separate royal briefing. His phone buzzed repeatedly before an aide finally leaned in and whispered, "Too quietly, too late." What should have been a routine debrief turned instantly tense. The heir to the throne hadn't been told. Not by his wife. Not by his staff. Not by anyone. And that, insiders say, is where the damage began. By the time he returned to the palace, the heir was charged. A storm waiting to break. Behind closed doors, the confrontation was immediate. Catherine, calm but firm, insisted the meeting had been cleared by a small group of senior advisors and was purely philanthropic in nature. No hidden agendas. No press stunts. Just a discussion about joint global mental health efforts. But for William, it wasn't about the optics, it was about the trust. Why hadn't he been told? Why did it take tabloids, not briefing notes, to inform the future king of an event that would dominate headlines? Sources close to the couple described the exchange as sharp, emotional, and deeply personal. Royal aides, now caught in the crossfire, scrambled to contain the fallout. Security personnel involved in Brad's discreet entry were reportedly put under internal review. Communications staff were summoned for immediate accountability sessions. The question wasn't just why wasn't William informed, but who allowed this to happen without clearance? And within that confusion, the cracks widened. For the first time in months, William allegedly missed a scheduled engagement, choosing instead to leave the palace grounds entirely for several hours. His absence wasn't explained in press releases. It didn't need to be. The message was clear: this wasn't business as usual. Catherine, under intense scrutiny, reportedly held her ground. She insisted the meeting was born out of months of private coordination, that it had nothing to do with celebrity, and everything to do with impact. But William, according to sources, questioned the timing, the secrecy, and the sudden emergence of cameras at what should have been a private arrival. The royal couple, once united in their public resilience, were now facing a split in strategy, and that split was no longer invisible. As the palace issued a standard no comment, the press leaned in harder. Anonymous insiders whispered of tense dinners, closed doors, and the unspoken divide that had grown between duty and independence. The royal image, flawless on the outside, was showing its seams. Yet while the conflict stirred behind the scenes, something even more unexpected was brewing beyond them. But while emotions boil inside the palace, the public wants more, and Catherine's team makes a stunning move to shift the narrative. She wasn't scheduled to speak. She wasn't supposed to say anything. But hours after the images broke, Catherine released a rare personal message, brief, elegant, and cryptic, and it only raised more questions than it answered. The world was still reeling when, without warning or press buildup, a message appeared on the Princess of Wales's personal social media channel. No photo. No signature. Just a single line in simple white text against a deep navy background, Sometimes strength is found in unexpected collaboration. The post was live for less than 10 minutes before it was shared globally, racking up millions of views within the hour. Commentators from London to Los Angeles scrambled to interpret its meaning. Was it a nod to Brad Pitt, a veiled statement to William, or something entirely more calculated, an intentional spark to set the media alight? The palace declined to offer any clarification. No follow-up. No edits. Silence. And in that silence, the speculation exploded. Some praised the message as a quiet act of defiance, Catherine, refusing to be controlled by protocol, asserting her independence in a moment of global frenzy. Others warned it was dangerously ambiguous, risking the monarchy's tightly maintained image of unity. Yet it was precisely that ambiguity that gave the statement power. For the first time in months, the princess wasn't being spoken for. She was speaking, and the world was listening. Within hours, body language experts were called onto primetime panels. Analysts broke down Catherine's past interviews, her phrasing, even her punctuation habits. Was the word collaboration a reference to a charity project or a person? Unexpected seemed to fuel the fire. Suddenly, every whisper of her connection to Brad Pitt became headline material, magnified tenfold. And what began as a grainy photo of a black SUV had now evolved into a full-scale royal media war, fueled by 7 cryptic words. The divide in public opinion widened. Some saw her as a woman reclaiming control, stepping into a role long defined by silence and restraint. Others viewed it as reckless, a breach of the palace's centuries-old vow to never explain, never complain. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, Meghan Markle's name began trending. Comparisons were inevitable. Her past struggles with press freedom, public messaging, and palace control re-emerged in every headline. Was Catherine now walking the same path? Or was she redefining it entirely? But there was something deeper brewing beneath the surface, a strategy that extended far beyond a social media post. Because while the public fixated on meaning and motive, those within the palace knew one thing for certain: nothing this high profile is ever spontaneous. Catherine's message, however poetic, was no accident. It was a signal, not just to the press, but to those watching from behind closed doors. Something was shifting. The rules were being rewritten, and Catherine had just made her first move. But buried beneath public chaos lies a deeper, more strategic operation, and Brad Pitt may not be the only outsider stepping into the royal fold. Multiple sources suggest this isn't a one-time anomaly, it's part of a larger plan. A quiet operation dubbed Renewal may be underway, aiming to modernize the monarchy's image by bringing in celebrity collaborators. And Brad Pitt? Just the beginning. For months, whispers inside Westminster have hinted at a confidential strategy meeting between royal advisors, political aides, and a select group of cultural consultants. The goal? Not just to salvage public perception, but to reinvent it. Leaked documents obtained by an anonymous insider reveal startling details, mentions of cross-platform visibility, non-political social capital, and the phrase that has ignited speculation like wildfire: global empathy repositioning. At the heart of this initiative is Catherine, Princess of Wales, named as the key figure in what insiders are now calling the monarchy's most ambitious soft power campaign in decades. The implications are staggering. This isn't just about appearances or charity partnerships, it's about reshaping the crown's relationship with the world. A carefully orchestrated blend of diplomacy, storytelling, and emotional influence. And Brad Pitt's name isn't alone. Alongside his, the documents list other globally recognized figures, from environmentalists to filmmakers to philanthropists, each one known not only for fame, but for causes that resonate across generations. This isn't accidental. It's strategic. If the monarchy once relied on ceremony, it now seeks influence through connection. Interestingly, the driving force behind Operation Renewal doesn't appear to be King Charles, though he has reportedly expressed measured support. Instead, it's being fueled by a younger generation of royals, and quietly backed by progressive members of parliament, who see cultural relevance as the monarchy's last stabilizing pillar. One memo, dated just weeks before Brad Pitt's palace visit, outlines the need for collaboration with high-trust figures, who can bridge generational and geopolitical gaps. Another notes Catherine's increasing approval ratings among international audiences. Suddenly, the cryptic message she posted days ago about strength through unexpected collaboration reads less like emotion and more like strategy. Still, not everyone is convinced. Critics argue the plan reeks of desperation, that inviting Hollywood into the sanctum of monarchy risks eroding the very mystique that gives it power. But royal communications teams appear to be betting on a different formula: humanity over hierarchy, narrative over neutrality. In a post-truth world, control over perception is the new monarchy, and Catherine is being positioned as its sovereign voice. PR analysts believe this approach could either redefine the royal family or destabilize it entirely. For every success story of modern leadership, there's a cautionary tale of image turning into artifice. And with the public already divided over Catherine's recent moves, one misstep could unravel everything. But the stakes are too high for retreat. Renewal is in motion. The crown isn't being defended, it's being rebranded. But just as the palace begins to control the chaos, an unexpected twist reopens old wounds, and it starts with a single photograph. It's blurry, it's private, and it was never meant to be seen. A leaked photo showing Brad and Catherine together, months before today's meeting, throws the official timeline into question. And for the royal family, the implications are seismic. The image emerged late at night, posted anonymously on a niche message board before erupting across global media platforms in a matter of hours. It showed Catherine, unmistakable in her grace, seated beside Brad Pitt in what appears to be a secluded royal garden. The detail that set everything ablaze? Her hand, lightly resting on his arm mid-laughter, mid-conversation. It didn't scream scandal, but it whispered enough to send the monarchy into damage control. The date attached to the file's metadata? April. Long before Brad's visit to Buckingham Palace, and long before anyone publicly linked the two. Neither Catherine's team nor Pitt's representatives confirmed or denied the photo's authenticity. The silence was deafening. In a media climate starved for answers, the lack of denial became its own form of confirmation. Analysts pored over the image, the angle of the shadows, the color of Catherine's blouse, the faint outline of royal hedges familiar from official photographs. Experts argued over whether it was staged, cropped, or candid. But the speculation had already outpaced the facts. Headlines didn't ask, "Is it real?" They asked, "What does it mean?" The response from the palace was swift and severe. Press officers went into full lockdown, calls were stonewalled, and legal teams were allegedly activated to trace the leak's origin. Behind the scenes, sources revealed a flurry of internal emails flagged with high security clearance. One aide, reportedly involved in discussions over optics risk related to Catherine's public engagements, was quietly removed from duty just hours after the photo went viral. The walls were closing in, and still no one offered an explanation. Online, the reaction was predictably divided. Some hailed the image as harmless, a moment of shared humanitarian focus between two public figures. Others leaned hard into romantic conspiracy, fueling hashtags and dissecting body language with obsessive intensity. Catherine's supporters argued the entire frenzy was a misogynistic projection. Her critics claimed the silence proved guilt. And through it all, Brad Pitt remained completely, strategically silent. Yet beyond the gossip, a deeper unease was taking root. If the palace couldn't control a single photograph, what else had slipped through its carefully curated grip? What else did the public not know? For an institution built on protocol and precision, the leak represented more than scandal. It signaled vulnerability, a breach of narrative control, and perhaps a breach of trust. As pressure mounts, one royal makes a bold decision to address the speculation, and it's not who the world expected. In a move no one saw coming, Queen Camilla breaks her silence not to defend, but to warn. Her interview, taped without palace approval, is as blunt as it is damaging, and it sends shockwaves through the royal hierarchy. The clip aired just past midnight on a program few expected to be granted royal access. But what began as a soft retrospective on her public life quickly shifted tone. With the cameras rolling and the questions veering into dangerous territory, Camilla leaned forward and delivered a single sentence that would reverberate across the globe. Hollywood has no place in monarchy's private corridors. It wasn't vague, it wasn't polite, and it wasn't subtle. Viewers knew immediately who she meant. The implications were unmistakable, and they struck directly at the heart of the palace's most volatile storm. She didn't name Catherine. She didn't need to. The reference to discipline over drama echoed Charles's own past sentiments, painting a clear divide between tradition and the new, increasingly modern face of the monarchy. Camilla framed herself as a protector of legacy, someone who remembered the cost of letting public attention overshadow royal purpose. In doing so, she cast Catherine's recent choices, including her cryptic post, her high-profile projects, and now the Brad Pitt encounter, as distractions, or worse, transgressions. The royal household, already stretched thin with mounting scrutiny, descended into crisis mode. William, sources say, was blindsided. He had not been consulted, and the interview's airing caught him mid-preparation for a diplomatic event. His fury, according to an aide, wasn't just about content, it was about control. That Camilla, a senior royal and the queen consort, could go rogue in a media environment this volatile stunned even seasoned insiders. Some believe it was calculated. Others call it sabotage. Behind palace doors, factions began to crystallize. Camilla's inner circle lobbied harder than ever for a return to tradition, framing the recent turmoil as proof that the monarchy had strayed too far from its foundation. They pushed for a restoration of clear lines, a not-so-subtle dig at Catherine's rising profile and unconventional alliances. Meanwhile, supporters of the Princess of Wales argued the Queen's intervention only deepened the public divide and risked damaging the family's credibility at a critical juncture. And the public? Once again, they were watching a royal fracture unfold in real time. Social media exploded. Hashtags trended. Commentators chose sides. Some applauded Camilla for drawing a line in the sand. Others accused her of undermining the very institution she claimed to defend. But what no one could deny was this: the rift was real, and it was growing. But in the midst of royal fallout and media madness, Catherine herself makes the final move, one that reframes everything. She doesn't speak. She doesn't post. She simply appears. And with that, Catherine delivers the clearest message yet. As the world watches, she reclaims control not through words, but through presence. And suddenly, the story shifts. In a moment of flawless strategy and quiet defiance, Catherine, Princess of Wales, walks onto the stage of a global humanitarian summit, with no press release, no media fanfare, and no advanced palace confirmation. The audience gasps. For days, her silence had echoed through headlines, dissected and speculated upon by everyone from royal correspondents to late-night satirists. But now, with every step she takes toward the center of that stage, it's clear Catherine hasn't been hiding. She's been preparing. And she chose this moment not to respond but to lead. Flanked by global changemakers, diplomats, and activists, Catherine is placed alongside one name that immediately reignites headlines: Brad Pitt. Their seating arrangement is not commented on. Their expressions are calm. No whispers, no glances, no small talk captured on camera. And yet, the symbolism is deafening. The very man whose visit to Buckingham Palace sparked a week-long firestorm is now sharing a platform with the woman who had been accused of scandalizing the crown. Except now, there is no scandal. Only purpose. Observers are quick to spot the emblem pinned discreetly to her attire. It's the symbol of a foundation tied to child trauma recovery, a cause close to both Catherine and Brad's hearts. It's a calculated move, one that connects their missions without ever needing to explain. Suddenly, what had been dismissed as tabloid gossip begins to evolve into something more profound. It wasn't about celebrity. It was about strategy. And Catherine, without uttering a single word, repositions the narrative with the elegance of someone who understands power beyond protocol. The audience rises to its feet. The applause is thunderous, not for drama, not for controversy, but for conviction. This was a princess unshackled from the traditional scripts of royal behavior, choosing to chart her own path under the fiercest spotlight. She hadn't refuted Camilla's words. She didn't need to. Her actions spoke louder. They told a story of vision, autonomy, and resilience. William is nowhere to be seen. His absence is noted, but it doesn't overshadow. Instead, it highlights something deeper, a shift in dynamic, a new balance in how the royal narrative is shaped. Catherine's presence is no longer seen as an extension of her marriage or her title. She is now viewed as a force in her own right, commanding attention not because of scandal, but in spite of it. Public perception pivots. She is no longer embroiled in palace politics, she is transcending them. And in that precise moment, Catherine redefines what it means to be royal in the 21st century. She is poised, powerful, and deliberate. The headlines shift from speculation to admiration. The conversation changes. And as she leaves the stage, the message is undeniable. She may walk alone, but she walks ahead. But what this moment truly signals is not just personal evolution, but the monarchy's inevitable transformation. What began as a paparazzi snap has become something much larger. The monarchy isn't just managing a scandal, it's living a turning point. And Catherine, she may be the face of what comes next. Not royalty as tradition, but royalty as revolution. In just days, the narrative has undergone a seismic shift. What was initially framed as a crisis has remarkably become a catalyst. Public support for Catherine has surged to unprecedented levels. Polling across the UK and beyond reveals a striking truth: people aren't just sympathizing with her, they're standing with her. Approval ratings for the royal family, which had dipped dangerously low after years of internal turmoil, are now climbing, and it's Catherine leading that recovery. No apology, no retreat, just action, poise, and a vision that feels deeply in tune with the 21st century. Where once Hollywood ties would have ignited accusations of vanity or distraction, they are now being recast as strategic alliances. Thoughtfully curated, purpose-driven, and anchored in shared causes. Brad Pitt's silent involvement, while still shrouded in mystery, now appears less about shock value and more about shared impact. His one public comment, 5 words that echoed across continents, was not a headline grab, but a declaration of intent: purpose brought us together. And just like that, the drama begins to dissolve, giving way to something far more potent: possibility. Insiders say William and Catherine are already working behind closed doors to recalibrate their roles. No longer content with ribbon-cutting formalities or the occasional televised statement, they're reportedly building a model of modern monarchy, centered on relevance, responsiveness, and international resonance. Catherine's solo appearance, once seen as defiance, is now acknowledged internally as a proof of concept. A demonstration that the royal family doesn't have to stand still, that it can evolve without losing its identity. Even more tellingly, younger royals are watching and learning. Courtiers have begun whispering about new advisory groups exploring digital diplomacy, youth engagement through global platforms, and cross-industry collaboration. Parliament, once deeply cautious of change, has reportedly opened informal conversations about how legislative frameworks might support a more agile, modern crown, one that still respects history, but doesn't fear innovation. And the press? For the first time in years, they're not hunting for cracks, they're spotlighting momentum. What began with a blurry photo of a Hollywood icon stepping out of Buckingham Palace has led to a renaissance in royal relevance. A scandal turned strategy. A storm transformed into a movement. And at its center, a woman once labeled reluctant royal, now becoming the architect of the monarchy's next era. Because the question is no longer why Brad Pitt was at Buckingham Palace, it's what that visit set in motion, and how the crown will never be the same again. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.